Donald Trump gave his foreign policy speech. I'm looking for an adjective here that I can say on the radio. It was interesting to see Donald Trump reading a prompter. You really get how bad he is at it when you listen to the audio without watching him. Because when you watch him, it doesn't seem quite as bad. But boy, his speech is pretty bizarre. But and it was filled with internal contradictions. We're gonna make friends in the world. We're gonna be nice with China and Russia and whatnot. Try to make them allies. But if they don't want to be our allies, we're gonna kick the crap out of them. I mean, those weren't his phrases, but you find throughout his speech that the 3 or 4 major points that he made, in each one he later contradicted himself or came close to it. But I thought one of the most interesting parts of his speech yesterday, his foreign policy speech, was his reference to the America First movement. People frequently comment on how Donald Trump seems to have no sense of history whatsoever. I would put that on steroids. Here is Donald Trump. First of all, actually, before we hear Donald, let me just tell you what the American First Movement was, and why no one has used language like that since World War II. Back on 9/11, 1941, 9/11 is particularly odd, Charles Lindbergh gave a speech. It's referred to as the Des Moines Speech. And it was about, now keep in mind, this was before Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was December of 41. This was 9/11-41. And he's warning us that Roosevelt wants to get us into the war in Europe, but not just Roosevelt. So let me quote from, this is Charles Lindbergh, verbatim. And this is, as he's speaking basically on behalf of the America First movement at the time. Quote, "When this war started in Europe, it was clear that the American people were solidly opposed to entering it. Why shouldn't we be? We had the best defensive positions in the world. We had a tradition of independence from Europe. And the one time we did take part in a European war left European problems unsolved, the debts to America unpaid." That'd be World War I. "The 3 most important groups who have been pressing this country toward war are the British, the Jewish, and the Roosevelt administration." Yes, that's what he said. England has devoted, speaking first to the British, Charles Lindbergh, who was arguably the most famous man in America at the time, or one of them. "England has devoted and will continue to devote every effort to get us into the war. We know that England is spending great sums of money for propaganda in America during the present war. If we were Englishmen, we'd do the same. But our interest is first in America. America first. And as Americans, it is essential for us to realize the effort that British interests are making to draw us into their war. The second major group I mentioned is the Jewish. Instead of agitating for war, the Jewish groups in this country should be opposing it in every possible way, for they will be among the first to feel its consequences." Now, he doesn't explain what that means, but maybe they're going to have to start wearing yellow stars here too. I don't know. Their greatest danger. I started to say this is Trump. This is Lindbergh speaking of the Jews in America. Their greatest danger to this country lies in their. Keep in mind, this is Charles Lindbergh speaking about Jewish people in the United States, 9/11, 1941. This is the America First movement. Their greatest danger to this country lies in their large ownership and influence in our motion pictures, our press, our radio, and our government. In other words, in Lindbergh's mind, our, is different from Americans who happen to be Jewish. And then he talks about the third most powerful group in our government that the America First movement is fighting against. And I quote Charles Lindbergh, 9/11-41. "The Roosevelt administration is the third powerful group which has been carrying this country toward war. Its members have used the war emergency to obtain a third presidential term for the first time in American history. They've used the war to add unlimited billions to a debt which is already the highest we've ever known. And they've used the war to justify the restriction of congressional power and the assumption of dictatorial procedures on the part of this president and his appointees." Deja vu, anybody? Okay, so that is the America First movement. And here is Donald Trump yesterday.
"America First will be the major and overriding theme of my administration."
Right. He amplifies that considerably. And I got a note from Lamar Waldron, my partner in writing. We wrote several books on the Kennedy assassination, and Lamar has gone on and written another one about that, and an amazing book about Nixon. And Lamar notes to me what most people remember about the America First Committee, 1940-41, was its chief spokesman, Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh was an ardent racist, white supremacist, anti-Semite, and admirer of Hitler and the Nazis. He even got a medal from Goering and once planned to move to Germany to live under Hitler. In his America First speeches, Lindbergh made it clear he thought Jews were behind the push for war against Germany. I just read that quote to you. So even though America First, it was begun in September 41 at Yale as an anti-war group by students including future President Gerald Ford and Sergeant Shriver, by 1941 it was seen as increasingly pro-Hitler and anti-Semitic. Trump's own history of racism includes not just his rhetoric now, but going back to this 1973 New York Times article about his and his father's housing discrimination. Trump's own father was reportedly arrested in 1927 after a Klan riot in Queens, as reported by the Washington Post. The person arrested had the same name, same address as Trump's father. Trump is not only pro-fascist like Trump, but both were also big womanizers. Lindbergh had at least 3 German mistresses, 2 of them sisters, and at least 5 children by them, all while appearing to be a big family values type. Right. So, when I look at Donald Trump, I see fascism. And in that context, somebody called our program about a month or 2 ago and said, check out the May 9th, 1938 issue of Life magazine. So I went on eBay and I found one, and I bought it. And it's got a picture of a young woman walking down some steps. And it says summer sports style. But there's a major article in it about Mussolini and fascism. And it starts out, Americans think of government as something outside themselves. This is Life magazine, 1938. They're talking about Mussolini and fascism. They speak of government and business, Americans. In Italy, there is no such distinction. Mussolini invented the corporate state, of which he is proud. Modern fascism differs from personal dictatorship, chiefly in the ideal of the corporate state. And then they quote from the articles, the new Italian constitution that imposed fascism on Italy. The corporations constitute the unitary organization of the forces of production. The law recognizes corporations as state organs. Private initiative is the most effective and valuable interest in the interests of the nations. And then it goes on, Mussolini invented fascism. If anybody did, Hitler made it famous. Mussolini uses less brutality, but Hitler gives his people better shows. Anti-Nazi Jews in Rome were temporarily jailed. Only gradually has Mussolini abolished everything else in the Italian constitutional government, an active parliament, an independent judiciary, etc. In 1934, he held an election in which 99% of the Italians voted yes. Then Il Duce said that elections are a waste of time and he would have no more of them. Most important of all methods for keeping Italians content with their bonds is the propaganda that beats mercilessly upon them. Fascist propaganda not only consists of complete control of press, radio, stage, and screen, but also descends to such devices as covering the walls of every little fishing village and mountain village. Believe, obey, and fight was the most popular of the fascist slogans. Credere, obbedire, and combattere, if my lousy Italian is correct. So, are we heading in a dangerous direction, or am I being just totally alarmist here? 15 minutes past the hour. I'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
The American First Committee initially had seemed only the latest and most extreme example, writes Life magazine.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.